Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Phillip. This is the third in the fourth series of videos around the weather conditions in Little Cup. And this time we have sun, as you can obviously see by the title. I'll be explaining as much as possible about this weather condition because it is such an important weather condition. It is arguably the most viable weather condition, and by many even suggested to be by far the most viable. Though this is quite questions and disregard when you look at Digley's rise in utility and being able to actually threaten out Pokemon like Vulpix very effectively, to the point where certain other Pokemon that are also viable in the team are very much threatened. But regardless, it is still a very important playstyle. So the first thing you want to notice is the fact that this is a very defined playstyle. This is defined by Lucy, aka Madoka, aka Queen Lucy, aka the Queen of Sun. And she single-handedly defined this entire playstyle to the point where it has a very basic shape that about any team needs to follow in order to be viable. So the first thing we're gonna view is the fact that we need a very viable setter that can actively do its job good. Then we have a very strong abuser to make as much as possible use of this, or if not, then we would go in a more balanced route, which isn't the most ideal thing for Sun. However, it can work, don't get me wrong, and I'm going to explain that later. We have a Pokemon that deals with both of these Pokemon's answers, for in this case Archon, as you can see by this list. Fletchling, that's answered. Vullaby, somewhat answered. Munchlax, somewhat answered. Punta, Growlithe, Houndour, somewhat answered, but for sure threatened. Chespin is completely obliterated. Thanks to Acrobatic. We have Minfu, which allows us slow momentum, gaining more ability of being able to switch in Vulpix or switch in Bellsprout right after. If we were actually running Sunny Day, that would have been even better. But yeah. Then we have Snubble. Snubble allows us good synergy, it allows us a good fighting type answer, it allows us a good defensive wall in general, allowing a somewhat creative answer against other Pokemon, say Fletchling, but also Pokemon like Vullaby are very much threatened with this thing. And lastly, we have Ponyard. Now, Ponyard is a bit of an odd one. Ponyard actually does not do too much compared to what it previously did, but it still allows us to get up Stealth Rocks, which is a very big thing. Allowing Stealth Rocks, getting Stealth Rocks up, mostly would matter for Life Orb Bellsprout sets, or running a set with Kraut, based on the calculations. However, it still is pretty decent and allows you to get past Ghastly, Life Orb Abra. Sash Abra would be Sash Broken, which is great. It allows us another answer against Fletchling somewhat. It allows us another answer against Fairy types, I should say, as Bellsprout, even with Eviolite set, is not the greatest of answers, but still is pretty decent considering the spread. And overall, pretty great poke, especially with the knockoff utility and the offensive utility that this Pokemon already provides, especially against, say, sticky webs. Now, if we're gonna view the options that are used over certain Pokemon, Ponyard is going to be mostly replaced, and your Sun Sweeper is going to be mostly replaced. Magnemite would basically allow you the same kind of answer against Life Orb Abra, same answer against Ghastly, would allow you same utility against Fairy types, however would not allow you the same offensive utility against certain other things. It doesn't give you Stealth Rocks, for example, but it would still give you a very reliable Pokemon in terms of Volt Switch. It would give you a reliable attacker and a great way of withering down your opponent, regardless of having knockoff. The Scarf set works a bit in between those kind of things, as the offensive analytic utility basically allows you to one-hit KO so many Pokemon effectively. You can also run Sturdy or Magnempool on this, however I'm not a big fan of Magnempool, and Sturdy would mean you need very good notice on the fact that you want support from Defog as much as possible. But Analytic basically would allow you strong wall breaking capacity, not necessary for Sun Team basically, because Bellsprout is already a beast. Up to the Bellsprout, we can very easily view the fact that Bellsprout can... Oh yeah, another thing. If we're gonna view against, say, Diglett, this thing would be less weak against Diglett, though it would still be quite threatened. Same reason why I run Ender on Magnemite, combined with certain other reasons that makes it a very viable move. Life Orb Bellsprout is a bit of an odd option over Eviolite, as it would give you less balanced utility, however it would give you better offensive utility. Being able to wall break past certain Pokemon is a slight bit better, and that combined with Stealth Rocks would actually give you great calculations in terms of how effective that is. Other Pokemon like Bulbasaur, I'm not a fan of Bulbasaur on this specific team, like Madoka's team. The reason why is because Bulbasaur basically is much more suited for setup utility. Grout is its niche. Try to abuse that as much as possible. I'm gonna go into that a bit later. Now, choice card Houndour, I do need to say Tazzy. Reason why that user basically suggested the utility of that as being able to stop Ponyta, being able to stop fire types in general, which is a great thing against in Sun teams, because this is one of the only viable fire types that work alongside Vulpix. I'm gonna go into all the other fire types as well. But yeah, this Pokemon gives you utility against basically spamming with fire. You have an answer against Ponyta, you have good offense against those Pokemon like Abra, those Pokemon like Ghastly, especially with Pursuit's utility, and so on and so forth. So it's a great Pokemon overall. Bit of a trade-off, again, with Ponyard. Now the setters, first thing you want to notice is the fact that Vulpix is overall the best setter. What do I mean with this? Vulpix gives you the longest utility and the most instant utility. You do not waste a turn, you do not need to take damage, you simply set up weather the moment you get in. You do not have momentum, however, and this is one of the biggest downsides in my opinion. You don't have an instant momentum move like U-turn or Volt Switch, which is your main downside. However, it also happens to be that you are a majestically great wall breaker. You have 17 speed and 14 attack. That might not sound like much, however, if you take into account Sun, and if you take into account the damage of Fire Blast, you obliterate about any enemy, even without Life Orb. Cottony is much more suited for the setup perspective, as what you previously said with Bulbasaur. Especially considering the fact that you put up Sunny Day, you might live a hit. You're probably living in it actually, and then you go for Memento. Now the only downside with this would be Ponyard, as that would be a primary answer against you, and would be able to block Memento, which is not great. Far from great actually, but still. Basically very suited for those kind of teams, especially against basically Bulbasaur and Numel. Those are the two most notable ones. But you can also work with Bellsprout. However, I'm not too big of a fan because it's a very odd kind of team that you're building then. Eviolite Bellsprout, obviously, with the Grout set. Meanfu with the Sunny Day set is suggested to be viable. This spread I honestly prefer even more, even though the slow momentum set is actually better for setting up Sun as well. Basically, this allows you to also go for Heat Rock. However, if you go for Heat Rock, you are pretty much outclassed by Vulpix in that perspective. The only thing you have is is momentum, literally. But yeah, pretty reliable setter nonetheless. As always, Meanfu is always reliable. But Vulpix has a bit of an odd perspective, if I would say so. Vulpix, with the Scarf set, basically deals with Pokemon like Diglett, which would otherwise threaten you out. However, this situation would mostly say, I put up Sun for myself and abuse it as strongly as possible for my own. Your weather condition is more of a downside in terms of team building, as you cannot straight up make a Fire Water Grass core with this offensive thing. Because normally a fire type can be put in a very good offensive core with Fire Water Grass core, though that is a very good balance core as well. If we're going to view more from the balance perspective, you're mostly going to be viewing the fact that Ponyta can very effectively threaten things out. It has Sunny Day just for itself, nothing else. Why do I say this? Is because Sunny Day increases your recovery, increases your damage with Fire Blast, decreases damage from water attacks, and allows you to instantly threaten your opponent back again. Once they see Sun Up, they think, okay, Solar Beam's coming. Because that is your primary way of obliterating them. Your traditional answers like Chinchu are very much nullified with this. And most of the time people don't have just an answer from Sunny Day Ponyta. And this is a bit of an odd one in comparison to all the others, because this is completely for its own. You can still abuse it, don't get me wrong, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. Now I also forgot to say that Overheat on Vulpix basically allows you to one-hit KO about any balanced Pokemon, say faster Meanfu like this spread. Once stealth rocks are up, I think that's 100% to 1 hit KO. Moves like Fire Blast 2 hit KO about any defensive mon, and that's always great. Life Orb set I'm not gonna talk too much about because I don't really see the point in that on a Sun team. That's much more for a balanced team. Now going on to the list of abusers, we first of all want to know that Bellsprout, I should say, sets a baseline. Basically what all Pokemon want is 13 speed, because 13 times 2 is 26, which is 1 above 25. And why 1 above 25? Because 25 is the same as 17 times 1.5, which is the Scarf multiplier. Basically all Scarfs 17 speed users is basically the highest line you want to draw. So anything above that would practically outspeed anything, because every other thing would basically need setup or weather condition or something along those lines to actually outspeed that, which is great. Basically, this allows you to have strong Solar Beam, strong Sludge Bomb, which is your other stab. You have Sleep Power to deal with certain traditional checks, for example, Ponyta, Houndour. Houndour can still have Early Bird, don't get me wrong, however you do significant strong damage, and it cannot outspeed even with a Scarf set as it just suggested. Weather Ball is very important to keep in mind as well. Weather Ball is your primary reason to use over Bulbasaur, as that actually allows you to do... Weather Ball works like this. It basically doubles power under the weather condition and takes on the typing of that weather condition. For example, in Sun, it would be Fire, meaning a Fire type move also gets the boost of Sun. So basically you do 100 base damage and get the Sun boost on top of that, doing 150 practically speaking. Now this is on the Life Orb sets. You can also run the Eviolite Drought set, or Madoka suggested more balanced set, which doesn't even run Grout. Basically runs Eviolite with the offensive set, which is also fine. But basically what you really want to focus on is the fact that you don't ever want to trade off Weather Ball or Solar Beam. I've seen some people run away with Sludge Bomb, however I think Sludge Bomb is a quite important stab move, especially for a more balanced perspective. But yeah, Bulbasaur finds its use more in the more bulky, more setup-oriented perspective. Why do I say this? Because Bulbasaur really wants to get off a Grout. Once it gets off a Grout, basically you have safe opportunity to sweep the entire opponent's team. Because you don't even need Life Orb with that perspective. You basically put up a Grout, and then you have twice as strong damage output, because Grout under Sun actually does +2 for your attack and +2 for your special attack, and your special attack is primarily the thing that you want to abuse. Sleep Power allows you to then get past Pokemons like Ponyta, for example. You can also run Sludge Bomb over this, however I really disrecommend that. You can also run Sludge Bomb over Hidden Power Fire, but I also really disrecommend that. Why? Because you actually run Hidden Power Fire to deal better against Chespin, who would normally wall all your moves against Bellsprout, and if it's running Zen Headbutt, that is a very big problem. Or it can actually just set up spikes as well, which is also an issue because Synthesis just allows it to get all its HP straight up back. Well, a good chunk of its HP, obviously. Deerling might be the oddest one out of this. This is a physical Sunsweeper, which is the only one in the list combined with Numel somewhat. Basically, this does not need Chlorophyll. This just is an offensive set that just happens to work so well with this regardless. Because basically Return, Seed Bomb, Jump Kick, and Wild Charge allow you to deal with certain traditional checks. Return is your main stab, which obliterates opponents very effectively. But considering your speed here, you outspeed literally everything. You outspeed the 17 users regardless. Once your boost is up, you basically obliterate anything in terms of speed. You outspeed Pokemon like Diglett, you outspeed Scarf users. Both of those are very important to note. That's the primary thing you want to focus on. Jump Kick allows you to hit past Steel types, and Wild Charge allows you to hit past Flying types and certain Flying Water types, like Mantike, which is a bit of an odd thing to note. However, I just want to note that out because that can be a bit of an issue. Bulbasaur and Oddish run the same sets. This literally has the exact same numbers, as you can see, with the exception of the attack, which is redundant. Not redundant, but pointless to point out because there's no reason to run any attack on this thing. But the use of this set basically allows you to have less HP for Life Orb recoil, which allows you to actually be more durable, in combination with the fact that you have higher defenses than Bellsprout. That might sound a bit odd how I'm saying this, like you have less HP so you should take a hit less effectively. However, this is just a 1 HP recoil. You take 2 HP recoil with Bulbasaur if you're running the 23 HP Life Orb set, which isn't that great. That is not great. That basically is a lot of recoil that you don't want to take, and there's nothing you can actually do about this. But as I was saying, basically this is the only set that gives Oddish a niche. However, as you can see, it's the exact same as Bulbasaur can run, so this is a really scrappy niche in my opinion, considering another Pokemon can do the exact same as you. In my eyes, this is even better because you have less attack for confusion damage. But okay, that's just my personal opinion against that. Now we have the low-ranked Chlorophyll Sweepers, which are Petililli and Sharibu. Petililli has access to Sleeping Powder, Healing Wish, and uses Hidden Power Fire, while Cherubi uses Healing Wish, Weather Ball, and Hidden Power Rock. Now, why Hidden Power Rock and Weather Ball? Because it gets Weather Ball, so you want to abuse that, and it gets Hidden Power Rock simply because it wants to get a more offensive orientation. Petililli is much more in the support-based role while also having good offense, but as you can see, it only has 16 in comparison to 17. That might not sound like much of a difference, however, in LC that is a pretty decent difference. With the Life Orb set, you still get a lot of important KOs, don't get me wrong. However, you still miss out on a couple of those as well. If I remember correctly, Pokemon like Munchlax, for example, can very much threaten you out with the Bergio set, and that's not something nice. That is really not something nice. If it's running the Restock set, then even with Sleep Powder, you do not get past those Pokemon, while Cherubi basically has the ability to hit past other Pokemon, say, I do not quite remember. There are quite a couple of important Pokemon that you need to know. The only thing that Petililli basically has is Sleep Powder and Hidden Power Fire. Now, Healing Wish is actually your utility over Bellsprout and Bulbasaur traditionally. However, you really want to compare these two alongside each other if you really want support or if you really want offense and support. Numel is a bit of an odd option to explain. Numel works in one specific way. Basically, you get off, say, from Cottonee or from Vulpix, it doesn't really matter. The only thing you need to keep in mind is the fact that you need to get up Sun, and then you go into this Pokemon. Once you get up Sun, go into this Pokemon through Momentum. That would be the greatest way, for example, by Mienfoo or by Cottonee. Cottonee primarily, obviously. But in Grout, with Simple, Grout with Simple would basically give you +2 in Sun, and also another +2 in general. Basically what I mean with this is you get a +4 instantaneously. Now the Life Orb set, I'm not too big of a fan of this. Basically this gives you a good calculation regardless, but if you're gonna view it in Sun, I would actually prefer this set. This set does not really exist in terms of a set, however it works better in Sun. This gives you Eviolite with enough defense to actually take a hit properly, to set up a bit better. You have the opportunity to get up a Flame Charge more effectively and get up a Grout more effectively, and at that point you obliterate about anything at a +4 boost rather than a Life Orb +2 boost, which this set is traditionally made for. You also can run a physical set because you obliterate some traditional answers that you would normally lose against, which is another great thing to note. But the reason why I put these two Pokemon down below is because they don't really abuse Sun in a necessity. They simply have this offensive utility regardless. Now, Larvesta has access to Morning Sun, which under Sun actually allows you to just valid recovery instead of the traditional way of, oh, let me just recover a little bit against, say, Drain Punch from Mienfoo. Well, this would actually be a very valid recovery because this is above 50% recovery thanks to Sun. You do massive damage with Flare Blitz, excuse me. With U-turn you have the momentum gain, which allows you to go back into another Pokemon and basically keep it rolling from that point on. Say there is an answer against this Pokemon, then you can straight up U-turn and be safe again. Houndour I already explained its utility for, and lastly we also have Charmander. Now don't underestimate this Pokemon if it actually sets up a Sun. Many people say, okay, this is just outclassed by Houndour. I would not say that. I would not say it's completely outclassed. It gets access to ancient power, uses hidden power grass to hit faster than other Pokemon. However, the biggest thing to note is the fact that this Pokemon hits so hard with its utility of solar power, overheat, or flamethrower, or fire blast, regardless of life orb set, against any Pokemon. Now, the biggest issue that I see when I see people running the life orb set is the fact that they still run moves like overheat, which I don't think is that there is even a single calculation where that is important, considering a lot of other moves would simply do more damage. And another thing I want to note is the fact that you really miss out on a lot of speed. You are just at 17 speed, which is their balanced tier, don't get me wrong. However, considering the fact that this is too slow for Sun Sweeping, this is a bit unfortunate. This is more spam than sweeping, if anything, but you get my point of view. Now, lastly, I do want to emphasize on the fact that there are certain duns in this team, or certain duns that you definitely don't want in a Sun core. First of all, you don't want to build Fire, Water, Grass cores, or at least not with a primary water type. What do I mean with a primary water type? Water types that use its water set primarily. Pokemon like Carvanha, Pokemon like Corphish, those kind of Pokemon you don't want in your team. Why? Because these Pokemon are extremely hindered and hampered down in terms of their utility against other Pokemon like Fire types, while they are actually in the advantage in Sun, because they can burn you easily, you do not do enough damage, you simply fail at doing your job. Corphish doesn't have too much outside of water spam, so it's really not that great when you look at it that way. I also have to remind you that you basically don't want to step away from the standard set too much. You can also run Hypnosis, you can run Toxic, you can run... I'm not too big of a fan of Toxic, considering the fact you already deal with the majority of offensive Pokemon, and Toxic, against the few where it would matter, they can rest. So I don't really see your point in that. The only other Pokemon that you really deal with effectively, you could just as well burn, in my opinion. But yeah, basically what you also want to see is the fact that you can run... what was it again? You can run Hypnosis, which again brings me to the same point as Toxic. And I've also seen some people run Flamethrower, which is a pretty decent option. However, balance breaking is a very important thing that you really want to emphasize on, and don't try to take that away. Now, the thing that you see here with your biggest issue is with this set, where's your Weather Ball? You are outclassed by Bulbasaur. You are outclassed by Bulbasaur's both sets. Both sets do the job better because it actually has Grout. Oddish does not. Just to remind you why Bulbasaur is still superior in that regard, Oddish does not have Grout. Now, going on to the last part of the list. Now, what do you want to use over those water types? How about something like this? A Chinchou with a pretty decent set, with a pretty decent spread of moves, some good offense, and of course 14 speed. Basically, what this is going to do is you're going to have a pivot and a way of dealing with Fletchling, much like Magnemite works. Basically like that. Basically working more as being a overall answer like a rock type or electric type, rather than a water type. In the case of Tortuga, it's more of the rock type. This is a smasher basically at the point where you see, okay, Sun will take 2 more turns. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to smash up. I'm going to go for a Stone Edge against the first thing I see, or Zen Headbutt, to lure out those fight types. And after that, the Sun should go down, and then I can literally obliterate stuff with Waterfall. Basically at the end of Sun, this would work very effectively. Now this set is purely just a rock type. Ignores water typing. The only thing that the water typing does is hit Pokemon like Mienfoo stronger with the Scald, allowing it to be burned, and that's about the only thing. You basically set up Stealth Rocks, basically like Archon, how Archon works, and this actually has so much defense that it basically works the exact same like Archon. And then you have the Combo Sweeper Omanyte. As I just said with Tortuga, it works a bit like the Snivy Omanyte core in that perspective. Basically what you want to do is you want to be able to set up once you have swept with your Bellsprout. If Bellsprout simply couldn't ever accomplish his job effectively enough, you might think, okay, maybe Omanyte can clean the job up better. For example, a lot of teams run Vullaby combined with a fire type, and stuff like that. Basically, you don't have too much of a chance against that. However, if you can work your way around that, if you can see, okay, I can get my way around that, then there shouldn't be any problem, and then Omanyte is a bit superior. I wouldn't recommend running around with Omanyte that much. It would also give you a fletchling check, don't get me wrong, however, I wouldn't straight up recommend it. Now that should be everything there is to say about Sun. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna upload the other videos as well. Not upload the other videos, but I mean I'm gonna try to list down the other videos as well in the description below, and I'm also gonna link the two things right here, as you can see. I'm gonna link those down in the description below as well, and I hope you enjoyed this video. The next one up is gonna be Rain, and after that I will see what I can do next. Right now.